Joe Biden, right? Uncle Joe and his Rainbow Coalition death cult. He's requested the largest military budget in history, right? So, you know, this is a request for discretionary spending, and he's requested $753 billion. Yes. Let me say that again, $753 billion. Okay, let me show that to you over here. This is his request. So he's saying $769 billion in non-defense discretionary funding for the fiscal year 2022, which is a 16% increase over the year before. And $753 billion for national defense programs, which is a 1.7% increase. You know what's hilarious? Like, you have people that are outraged by this. And of course, in the wrong way. So you have Mitch McConnell, you have Republicans, you have people in the media writing shit like this, for example, right? That the White House budget plan is bad news for national defense goals. This is from The Hill, right? And why are they mad? They're mad because Uncle Joe is not feeding them enough money for the war machine. It's not enough, apparently. Like, they're saying it's just a 1.7% increase. It's just $10 billion. That's not enough. We need more because this barely adjusts for inflation. We need more. We have to deter China. Yes, we have to meet the growing nuclear threat of China. Motherfucker, how long have we been hearing about that? Do you remember what? It's been decades. Like, do you remember when Battlefield 4 came out? Right, they had this whole single player campaign. Battlefield is a multiplayer game, man. Don't make single player crap. You suck at it. But the whole thing, it's like brainwashing you, right? Oh God, China rising. They want to take over the South China Sea quick. There's a growing nuclear threat. We have to deal with that. Dude, they use the movie industry, the game industry to fucking brainwash people with this. And if you look inside of the request that Biden filed, look, he just says it out there. You know, look, we have to deter China. This discretionary request prioritizes the need to counter the threat from China as the department's top challenge. That's their top challenge, dude. Right? Say the department would also seek to deter destabilizing behavior by Russia, leveraging the Pacific Deterrence Initiative and working together with allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific region and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. Department of Defense would ensure that the United States builds the concept, capabilities, and posture necessary to meet these challenges. And I mean, this is absolutely insane because what they're trying to do, they're trying to escalate this Cold War, this new Cold War with China, right? They're going mad that China is doing the Belt and Road Initiative, right? And of course, they have to make up threats, right? They always need a boogeyman. So it's not enough that you have the war on terror still 2 decades on. That's not enough. No. Now it's China as well, right? So I want to show you something interesting, though. I want to show you something interesting. This is from Fareed Zakaria, okay? And man, this is a good segment. Like, this is a good segment. It's a genuinely good one. And again, you know, there's a saying that even a broken clock is right twice a day. And I'm kind of surprised that they let this air on CNN. But I'm just going to play it to you. We're going to watch the whole thing. It's about 5 minutes. But please pay attention because it's genuinely good. I'm not saying that like as a joke. It's genuinely good. Take a look.
During his visit to Asia this week, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin outlined his key concern.
And while we were focused on issues in the Middle East, China has modernized its military. And so our goal is to make sure that we maintain a competitive edge over China or anyone else.
Welcome to the new age of bloated Pentagon budgets, all to be justified by the great Chinese threat. What Austin calls America's edge over China is more like a chasm. The United States has nearly 20 times the number of nuclear warheads as China. It has twice the tonnage of warships at sea, including 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, compared with China's 2 carriers, which are much less advanced. Washington has over 2,000 modern fighter jets, compared to Beijing's roughly 600, according to national security analyst Sebastian Roblin. And the U.S. deploys this power using a vast network of some 800 overseas bases. China has 3. China spends about $250 billion on its military, which is a third as much as the United States. Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution notes that if China were in NATO, we would berate it for inadequate burden sharing since its military outlays fall well below NATO's 2% minimum. At the height of its imperial might in the late 19th century, when it ruled over a quarter of the world's population, Great Britain adopted a two-power standard. Its navy had to be larger than the next two put together. U.S. military spending remains larger than the next 10 countries put together, 6 of which are Washington's close allies. America's intelligence budget alone, around $85 billion, is much larger than Russia's total defense spending. And yet the U.S. never imagines that this kind of spending could ever be seen by other countries as worrying or threatening. In requesting even more money for his region, the head of the Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Davidson, remarked on China's increases in defense spending.
I cannot for the life of me understand some of the capabilities that they're putting in the field unless it is an aggressive posture.
But the fact that Washington is spending more on the military than it did at the height of the Vietnam War, even accounting for inflation, should threaten no one. In any case, the size of military spending is a misleading indicator of strength. Far more important are the objective sort and the political military strategy used to achieve those objectives. The U.S. has probably outspent the Taliban by, 10,000 to 1 in Afghanistan. And yet Washington has been unable to achieve its objective there, ensuring that the Kabul government rules the country uncontested. If the United States defines its goals carefully and assembles an intelligent and consistent political and military strategy to achieve them, it can succeed. Without that, millions of troops and trillions of dollars will not guarantee victory. Bigness is not a substitute for brains. Consider two contrasting exercises of power. America's F-35 fighter jet program, bedeviled by cost overruns and technical problems, will ultimately cost taxpayers $1.7 trillion, according to a document obtained by Bloomberg. China will likely spend a comparable amount of money on its Belt and Road Initiative, an ambitious set of loans, aid, and financing for infrastructure projects across the world aimed at creating greater interdependence with dozens of countries that are important to Beijing. Which do you think is money better spent? The Pentagon operates in a realm apart from any other government agency. It spends money on a scale and wastes money on a scale that is almost unimaginable. Every government agency is required to audit its accounts. But for decades, the Pentagon simply flouted this law. In 2018, it finally obeyed, paying $400 million for 1,200 auditors to examine its books. Yet it still could not get a clean bill of health. As Matt Taibbi notes in a brilliant expose of Pentagon accounting, the auditors were unable to pass the Pentagon or flunk it. They could only offer no opinion, explaining the military's empire of hundreds of acronymic accounting silos was too illogical to penetrate. The Defense Department has failed to pass 2 more audits. Having spent nearly 2 decades fighting wars in the Middle East without much success, the Pentagon will now revert to its favorite kind of conflict, a Cold War with a nuclear power. It can raise endless amounts of money to outpace China, even if nuclear deterrence makes it unlikely there will be an actual fighting war in Asia. Of course, there might be budget wars in Washington, but those are the battles the Pentagon knows how to win. Go to cnn.com/Fareed for a link to my Washington Post column this week.
Do you know how much I hate this guy? When I saw that Biden had requested this budget, I started preparing the segment. There's not a fucking point that I had ready that he didn't say in this video. Okay, there are a few things I want to add, but it's ridiculous. I was like, motherfucker. It's brilliant. He nailed it. I mean, you know, if you're gonna say anything about this segment, you could just say that the word imperialism was missing, right? He's basically laying it out. The only way that I would go further, because all of his points were absolutely true and solid, is that it's a racket. It really is a racket. You know, the United States, it's not an accident that they spend 10 times what Russia spends, right? Let me show this to you over here, okay? If you look at military expenditure, I mean, look at that compared to Russia. Now, keep in mind, this is from 2018, right? But the ratio, it's still the same proportion, right? So this is in 2018. Russia's spending $61 billion US dollars on their military. The United States is spending $648 billion, 10 times as much. And, compared to China, more than double. So, I mean, if Russia and China are capable, they're such threats with spending less than half or 10 times less, right? Depending on if you want to talk about China or Russia. I mean, what does that say about you? Why do you need that much more? I mean, either you're incompetent, you need that much more just to keep up with them, just to be on a level playing field, or there's something fishy going on. And we know what it is. They're starting. The United States starts wars to make money. I mean, just look at Dick Cheney, for example, right? He was head of Halliburton, right? And then he gets into office as vice president with George Bush, and now we have the war in Afghanistan, we have the war in Iraq, and Halliburton, of course, they're not just profiting from Iraqi oil, they're also profiting now from all of these contracts with the military, right? I mean, billions, trillions, it's inconceivable the amount of money they made, right? Right now, under Biden, who do you have as Secretary of Defense? Lloyd Austin. The day that he gets the job, he's still a board member at Raytheon. Just a few weeks ago, he's working for a weapons manufacturer. I mean, it's not a conflict of interest. It's a racket. It's a racket. This is not about threats. This is not about defense. It's about making money, right? It's about making money. It's about imperialism. That's what it's about, right? You have corporations in the United States that profit off of the contracts that they make with the military. They profit off of R&D, research and development. They profit off of the manufacturing. They profit off of making boots, uniforms, weapons, ammunition. It's a racket. That's what it's for. So the United States is not spending 10 times more than Russia on its military because Russia is actually a threat. It's doing that because there are people making money off of it, right? That's what it's about. And I mean, again, I hate for he just like he robbed my segment, man. No, seriously, that was good. I'm surprised that it aired on CNN. Like, good job. But just I want to show you these graphs over here. We've talked about this before, how the U.S. is operating in Africa. They have Africa Command, AFRICOM, right? And I mean, look at all of these bases that they have. These they have official bases, and then they have lily pads, and then there are other bases that are dark, that are unconfirmed. And lily pad is like a jumping point, basically. It's not a full on thing. But I mean, just look at it everywhere, right? Everywhere. And they don't need this. I mean, this is obscene. It's just imperialism. It's just so they can maintain this kind of control, right? Strategic posture, they call it. And if you go and read the budget request from Biden, he talks about, maintaining posture. Posture just means being a fucking bully. That's what it means, right? It's like when they go and they send a bunch of, a bunch of B-52s to fly over Iran as a show of force. I mean, that's a fucking nuclear bomber. What are you doing? Like, could you imagine? Not imagine. Do you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis when Russia had nukes off the coast of Florida and Cuba? How they fucking lost it? Like, that's a thing. We remember that now, right? You learned that in history class. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. Like, it's a date. It's a significant date. Because the United States was under threat of nukes. But it's so casual for the United States to just fly nuclear bombers around Iran, right? Or to have 15,000 military bases just surrounding Iran. Like, this is a meme. There's a caption like, how dare Iran put their country around all these U.S. military bases, right? And by the way, you can add another U.S. base inside Syria now. These bastards, well, several. But I'm talking about an air base, the one in El Tanef, which is over here, near Damascus. So I mean, this is obscene, right? This is obscene, and this amount of money that's spent. I mean, as Fareed was saying, like it's more than during the height of the Vietnam War. But let me also show you in history. I mean, look at World War II, right? The United States enters World War II after Pearl Harbor, right? And look at that. I mean, under Barack Obama, right, this so-called progressive, he's reaching the same levels as during World War II, and now it's going right back up again. Okay, take a look over here. I had this pulled up. Give me a second. Yeah, look. This is in billions of dollars, right? I mean, look at that. In 2011, 717 billion. And then it goes back down. And then, of course, Trump starts bringing it back up to 2016 when he gets into office. And then now Biden just continues. This is once again where you're seeing Joe Biden taking what Trump did and building on it, right? With everything. At the border, with the foreign policy, with Israel, with the military budget. He's like, screw it. Yeah, let's just keep going. Like people accepted it under Trump. We'll just get away with it now ourselves, right? And we'll have a black man leading the Pentagon, or a woman leading the Treasury, and by extension the Office of Foreign Assets Control, which is the authority that imposes sanctions to starve millions of people, right? It's a woman leading it now. What, you don't like sanctions? Are you sexist? What the fuck? It's insane. Like. And he mentioned the F-35, right? I mean, the F-35, they've sold a bunch of them to Britain, and I think Britain bought the wrong ones. You have the ABC variants. Only one of them works for aircraft carriers. And, I mean, he's definitely right about that. But someone's making money, right? Someone's making money off of that. Just to give you an example, like my point is that there's no one losing here. The only person losing is the taxpayer, the American citizens. That's who's losing the money. They don't care if the F-35 is a failure because they're going to keep on wasting money on it, right? I mean, just to give you an example, the B-52, in World War II, they had the B-17, right? The Flying Fortress. And then the B-52 comes along. We're talking about technology from the 50s and 60s. They're still using that plane. They're still using them to this day. Right? From an engineering point of view, it's a good machine, right? The F-35 is being built right now, and all of a sudden, we don't know how to do this, and guess what? Looks like we're going to need a couple more billion to keep going with it. It's a racket. They're scamming you. It's literally a scam. It's unbelievable. And I want to show you. I want to show you this. Do you remember how they tried auditing the Pentagon, which Fareed mentioned earlier? And they're missing trillions. They're missing trillions of dollars. And no one bats an eye. It's like, yeah, whatever. It's just a black hole that sucks up trillions of dollars. Whatever, dude. No, you can't have healthcare. I'm sorry. Right? Again, just showing you the priorities of the Biden administration. We can't do the $15 minimum wage. No. Sorry, the Senate parliamentarian said no. We can't give you the $2,000 checks. Those are $1,400 because Trump already gave you $600. But, I think I'll go bomb Syria. And, I think I'll ask for the biggest military budget in history. Yeah, whatever. What the fuck? What? Not even George Bush spent this much? Just put that into perspective. What are you doing? Why don't they apply that same logic with the checks to what they're doing now? They're saying Trump gave you $600. So to make that $2,000, you should only get $1,400 as a stimulus check. Okay, well, Trump, Trump was also spending over $700 billion for the defense budget. You already took some from Trump, so you don't need another 750. Just take the 1.6% increase. That's all you need. You already got it from Trump. God damn it, they're so vile. They really are. And I mean, just look at this, right? Look at all these bases that they have over here. This is obscene. This is obscene. So these big circles, right? That means there are over 100 bases. Look at Japan, and again, because even after World War II, the U.S. basically just colonized Germany and Japan, right? Look how many bases they have, right? It's obscene. It's truly obscene. And of course, the ones in gray, these are unconfirmed, right? There are probably more of them. And another thing that I would point you to when we're talking about this, we're talking about the conventional armed forces. You still have to keep in consideration, keep in mind that you have groups like Blackwater, which they rebranded to Academy, I think now. You have mercenary groups, you have private contractors, right? And that's like a second shadow army, effectively. Again, it's obscene. And another aspect of that is that you're effectively outsourcing jobs that can be done by the military to private contractors, right? And this is well known. You would have someone in the army training a private contractor to do their job, which they could do for 10 times less money. But because people in Washington have friends in the private industry, well, that's actually putting it mildly, because Washington is run by the private sector, by the military-industrial complex. Instead of paying, some private to do this job, or a corporal, or whatever it is, or a translator, they'll go and get someone from the private sector to do it for the military, right? Even the intelligence agencies, they subcontract work. Like they're running a racket. It's unbelievable. Again, just look at this. Just look at this. This is from 2019. Like, obviously the United States needs to go and ask China and ask Russia what they're doing, that they're so effective when they spend far less money. They really should. And, of course, I don't see any pushback on this at all. I mean, where are the progressives, right? Where is the squad? Again, I want to explain something to you. Like, I know I can't reason with Ted Cruz. I know that he is a lost cause. Yes, I know that I cannot reason with Mitch McConnell. He's also a lost cause. Many of these people, Joe Biden, I can't reason with Joe Biden. He's a lost cause. The people I can reason with, where I can find some common ground, at least I thought, are people like the squad, right? These are women of color. They have backgrounds that are similar to mine. Rashida is Palestinian. She's also Arab, right? Ilhan Omar, for example, she came to the United States as a refugee. She's Muslim. We have things in common, right? She comes from an Arab-speaking country. So I think that, okay, I can reason with them, right? But they don't say anything about this. The only one who's actually said anything is Rashida, right? She's made a tweet over here about this military budget saying that $750 billion for aiding death and destruction is immoral and sick. She's absolutely right. Instead, we should spend the money to help. Right? $20 billion to end homelessness, $50 billion for free 4-year public education, $50 billion for Child Care is Essential Act. Yes. $31 billion to fully fund the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Yes. 100%. Right? But is that enough? I mean, look, man, Trump was on Twitter, so maybe he might have seen that, but you have Biden now. Biden is not on Twitter, I can guarantee you. Actually, neither is Trump anymore. My point is the president is not on Twitter, so he's not going to see that. Second of all, you're a congresswoman, right? I'm not a congressperson. You're a congresswoman. You have more leverage than me, right? You have more reach than me. So, and of course, your constituents of whom you represent. Why don't you ask for a meeting with Joe Biden, not his White House chief of staff, not Ron Klain, with Biden? Meet directly with him. Why don't you, put pressure on him? Why don't you do a press conference? You can call a press conference. Remember when the squad, they called a press conference because of Pelosi, right? Or because of Trump, when Trump was saying, oh, you should go back home. He was doing this racist shit at his rallies. They called a press conference, right? Why don't they do that now? Why don't you show pictures of the Mahmoudiyah massacre? Why don't you show pictures of the people killed in drone strikes in Pakistan? You can put pressure on Biden publicly. You have that leverage. This tweet, yeah, okay, she's saying correct things, but it's not enough, right? And of course, the other ones, they don't see nothing. I like AOC, not a word, right? Just like not a word on when he bombed Syria, like nothing. Like, how can you be against gun violence and police violence, but you don't say anything about the military? They're wearing your flag. You passed their budget, right? Again, while it's true that they may not be voting for it, for the NDAA, they're still part of the government. They are part of this institution, the U.S. Congress. They're still part of that. So, if I were in their shoes And my party, the head of my party, is saying, oh no, we're instead of feeding the homeless and clothing the homeless and housing the homeless, instead of giving people health care, instead of doing everything that Rashida just listed here, no, we're going to go spend $750 billion on death and destruction. I would resign. I'd be like, I'm not staying in this fucking death cult party. This is a death cult. No one in their right mind does this. Goodbye. But they're never going to do that, of course, right? Because that would take political courage. And they're thinking long term. They want their careers, unfortunately, right? So again, there are people say like, oh, you can't expect them to do everything. I don't, but they can at least do something, right? They can really take a proper stance and mount a pressure campaign against Biden. That they can do. You can't come here and tell me that the most popular politicians in the United States can't do that. That's bullshit. Of course they can. They have a duty to do that, and they won't do it. That's the bare minimum that they can do, the bare minimum, and they're not doing it. I don't understand, because Rashida Tlaib, when she was under Trump, she disrupted one of his press conferences. Do you remember that? She burst in and they had to kick her out. They dragged her away. And then she was saying, let's impeach the motherfucker. Great. Where is that energy right now? Where is it? You were doing it under Trump. I saw you. We all saw you. That was great, right? That was awesome. Can we have some of that now with Biden about this? What is this? How can you pass this when you have so many people that are starving? Claudia was kind enough to drop this graph for me. And I mean, dude, like just student debt alone, right? You have this enormous bubble of student debt. It's 1.6, 1.7 trillion. It's absurd. You could cut that in half with one fiscal year with this budget. One fiscal year, you could do that. Biden is thinking of maybe, taking away 10,000 or 50,000, if you're beyond lucky, of your student debt. College for all, that's 500 billion. You could cover that entirely, right? Vaccines, if you wanted, right? You could have the Pfizer vaccine that's $20 per dose. 300 billion, you could expand Social Security. No, it won't do it. That's half. If the Pentagon budget is 753 billion, you need less than half just to expand Social Security. I mean, the medical debt, that you got 45 billion in medical debt in the United States, you could cover that several times over, right? That's less than 10%. So I find this absolutely ludicrous. I find this absolutely ridiculous that you have this country that is spending colossal amounts. It's the biggest amount in history, and no one bats an eye. And the people that you think you can reason with that are supposedly the most left in the party, in the Democratic Party, they just don't say anything. I would resign. I mean, if I were in their shoes, I would quit. Like, why would you be affiliated with a fucking death cult? That's what it is. It's a death cult. And that's it's not a joke. It's like, I mean, obviously it's satire, but like it's rooted in reality when we call it Uncle Joe's Rainbow Coalition death cult. That's what it is. When you have a country that spends over 700 billion on death and destruction a year, that's a death cult. That is a fucking death cult. And it's a disgusting racket. So there you go. Obscene. Honestly, it's obscene.